Yay, hey, the gang's all here. All right. Again, I don't have to gavel into session. We good? We want to get started. Thank you all for being here at our informal meeting. Under Management and Budget, we are going to have a presentation today by Mr. Chris Camacho. Thanks for joining us, Chris. Economic Development presentation by GPEC. So, welcome. Are you going to do that at the podium, or you want to do it here at the table? What's that?
Do table.
Table? Please.
Close and personal.
All right. It's like getting called to the principal's office. Sit at the table. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity to be here with each of you today. I'm excited to talk about a number of our successes this past year, as well as at least framing for you kind of the road ahead as the organization continues to elevate the brand recognition as we drive transactions, new business development opportunities for the market, obviously equating to new jobs, new high-wage jobs. So with that, Mr. Chairman and the board, I'll walk you through a brief presentation. I know we have just a few slides we've organized for you today. What we've done is we have gone through our specific contract with you and outlined specific elements as requested by staff to ensure that we've covered our bases on the organization. So if I can get this to work here. So let me walk you through just a brief history lesson on GPEC that we were formed in 1989 with the premise of getting, at that time, a number of cities to work together along with Maricopa County, instead of competing with one another, unifying resources to go outside of this market to build a brand strategy and obviously drive net new jobs for the region. Since that time, you see here that we've been involved in 670 new businesses, induced $12 billion worth of investment, and you see the job numbers associated with our level of work. And we do so in a very coordinated fashion, and that's what companies and or the national consulting teams that run the site selection due diligence are asking for, is that regions are organized and systemized so that you don't have 23 cities, in this example, not only competing with one another, but in this case, they don't have to go to 23 different cities in order to evaluate this metro market. The important aspect of why county-led economic development models work is that when a company decides ultimately to move into Buckeye, for example, like we had this past quarter, when Huhtamaki moves into Buckeye, you're going to see about 5 or 6 different communities within the trade area benefit, because those jobs are going to be afforded to the residents of multiple jurisdictions, multiple localities, and those residents cross jurisdictional lines, not only to create new tax base, but ultimately to access new jobs and new disposable income. And so our results, I think, speak for themselves. On the FY15 and 16 numbers you'll see here, we have a third-party process that we go through with our board of directors. We actually have 3 different economists that actually go through the process with our team and help identify the macro-level economic indicators of the Maricopa County region, along with our historical track record on deals and pipeline and payrolls generated. And they make a recommendation to our performance committee as to how to set these measures. So this is not GPEC. This is not our staff looking at these numbers and saying, here's what we think we'll do next year. This is a third-party set of economists that are assessing the health of the macro-level economy and giving our board recommendations on what to adopt.
Chris,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
So the payroll generated for 16 is 397 million?
Correct.
So just new jobs.
That's new jobs and the payroll generated from those jobs. Correct.
And then last year it was 332.
Correct.
The 5 years, so that's $1.4 billion. Just want to make sure I'm tracking. That's impressive. How does that rate compare to other western states? Texas or like
Sure.
Austin we compete with. Colorado, it seems like more and more we're competing with them.
Yeah, so Mr. Chukri, so our metro market comparisons against places like Denver, for example, or Austin, we are a larger market than both of those 2 respective markets. What we only count is net new to the market. So there are other organizations that focus on supporting the expansion of projects and coinciding net new payroll. Since we don't count those as just the attraction, Houston, Phoenix, and Dallas usually rank 1, 2, and 3 in terms of the top job outcomes. And so we're in good company when it comes to net new jobs, and obviously that induces the payroll level. Okay. So walking through just the rest of our top line metrics, what I'm really proud of is the ability to work across the entire county and driving results. the coordination that we've built with our 23 respective cities and each of you as well to drive outcomes for our county, and obviously inducing high wage jobs that drives our personal income measures up. We're a market that has an incredible opportunity to raise our average incomes for the county and the region. And so last year alone, you'll see what's referenced in our materials, a significant number of high wage jobs that we've not only targeted outside of Metro Phoenix, but lured them to Metro Phoenix. In any given year, we'll work on about 250 companies that are evaluating Metro Phoenix for investment. Our conversion ratio is on average about 15 to 17%, so meaning we'll hit about 40 to 45 new companies each year. And there's a lot of process that goes into that, as you can imagine, so we have to build up our data analytics team. It's no longer that companies just say, I love a specific city, so I'm going to move my company there or expand my company there. It's about ability to service their customers from a point of sale perspective, the supply chain, the labor environment, the tax environment, the regulatory environment. Our team has internal competency about how to talk with, whether it's a headquarters, a manufacturer, distribution company, a technology company, about the various inputs that go into site selection due diligence. So that's really what we focus on. But we're one of the most metriced organizations in the country, and that's really what I wanted to show you here. Let me go back one. So in terms of driving results for our county, you'll see that we're very measured, and we have a third-party assessment group through Applied Economics that runs a return-driven analysis. We do this for every one of our cities as well as the county. For every dollar that's placed into our organization, which our FY16 funding is the $573,675, is a 28-to-1 return, and that goes back to the measures on the previous slide, which is induced payroll and induced net new tax benefits of those companies that are making investments that wouldn't have made investments without our support. One example I'll make sure I make clear too is that when a company comes to Greater Phoenix, I'll give you the State Farm example. We did about 8 hours of work on the State Farm project through Jones Lang LaSalle, which is doing the national assessment. We didn't feel like we had material enough impact on that particular project. That's not in these numbers. So one thing that we talk about a lot with our board is material impact of our work influencing company decisions. So there are a handful of companies each year that do make decisions here, but if we were not in competitive context, or if there weren't other markets being considered, that's not something we would count in our numbers. So they have to be on the front end. We have to have competitor markets under review for us to count the implications. So moving forward to just collecting this last year's to Supervisor Chukri's assessment, it's just a pretty way to show the information. But a lot of induced payroll, high wage jobs. The average wage of those just over 3,000 high wage jobs was just under 71,000. So almost twice our average county wage are the jobs we're involved in. The next slide showcases the number of projects, and I can tell you we analyze where are these projects happening across the county as well, so across the districts, and you'll see there's a nice spread in our FY16 numbers of projects across various use types that expanded across the entire valley from Surprise to Buckeye, obviously in the central part of Phoenix, but Avondale, Scottsdale, and the Southeast Valley as well. And here's just a listing of the number of companies, 43 to be exact in this last year. So moving forward, our metrics as they've been established for this coming year, which is we're July through June. So we're through our first quarter. We're on track with meeting our metrics this year. As I described earlier, the third-party analytical process with APS and Cox and other economists that help us derive these numbers. These are the numbers set. On average, we've actually upped our numbers this year because of the healthy economy between 20 and 27%. So we're actually raising the bar for this year's performance. One of the aspects in terms of our key divisions, Michelle Kauk is here today also, who runs our communications strategy. We've obviously focused on the national media attention. We have a governor that's leading the cause in terms of establishing a great business framework and being pro-business. Ahead will be some focus obviously on our education system and how we continue to invest in our education system. Here's just a snapshot of some of the national recognition and story placements that our team has garnered. New York Times, Forbes, Fortune, Worth Magazine. We just did an Inc. interview this past week showcasing the positive brand attributes of the Metro Phoenix region.
Chris, question on the on the front end on locates, but how about, do you guys get called in when there is a significant company thinking about leaving Phoenix, and what do you guys do? Because that's Henkel, I guess, that just left, and American Airlines.
Sure.
What have you done
Yeah,
with
so Mr. Chairman, absolutely. If there's, and I'll give you some examples, the JDA software expansion ultimately that did end up happening in Scottsdale, but also McKesson was looking at some parking challenges in downtown. The city of Scottsdale in that case calls us, and we'll do a significant level of data analytics of other markets they're talking about analyzing to move to. Those are more retention deals were led by the cities, and then ACA and GPEC will support that effort. And they're not reflected in these numbers. We actually have a category called GPEC Assists that we do count, and we provide a briefing to our board on when we get involved in those projects, because those are just as important or more important. Retaining those kind of companies in our market is a lot easier to retain companies than it is recruit. But in a majority of the jobs that occur in a metro market, 80% of them come from the local base. So we need to do, I think, even a better job regionally of how we're engaging with aerospace and defense companies, microelectronics companies, technology companies. But generally, our cities are doing the local interaction, then they will call us as the analytical team to come in and help educate the business team that's performing their own internal due diligence. Okay. So shifting to our contractual obligations, one of the primary focal points of our contract is regional marketing and promotion. In any given year, we'll have an earned media metric, and that's simply how many impressions are we generating as a team internally, and that's Michelle and her team pitching stories through both internal mechanisms, through our cities, through the county, to garner outside media attention, positive media attention on our market. I will tell you my experience since I've been at GPEC since 2008, we're finally in the kind of positive storytelling mode. We've been playing defense for so long because of the economy and the uneven recovery, even some other things we've had to deal with. Now we're talking about autonomous vehicle activity. We're talking about the forward-facing strategy on innovation in our workforce, and ASU being the most innovative university system from U.S. News and World Report 2 years in a row. A lot of positive things we actually can go out and talk about now. We still have opportunities, in my opinion, of things we need to improve on, but for the most part, our external narrative is no longer having to play defense. We can go very aggressively, offensively. The second outlined item in the middle here is our industry prospecting. We have a team of 9 that does nothing but take our research and analytics targeting from a geography perspective, like California, our next door neighbor. A lot of opportunity to cultivate new opportunities for our market and software as a service companies, advanced manufacturing, in regional headquarters. So we do a lot of outward targeting. About 38% of our deal flow today comes from an internally generated opportunity. And the balance that comes from national consultants or brokers or others that we have an engagement strategy with. And the third item is the EDC. Our premise is how do we organize the mayors and supervisors in a way where there's constant collaboration to build one regional strategy, so we don't have really cities in a parochial way competing with one another on economic strategy. So we have everyone in the tent along with the private sector, which is really important because when we began, we were a majority publicly funded organization. Today, we're approximately 2-to-1 private money. So about 65% of our money is private. The remaining balance is publicly funded through the county and the 23 cities. So just to expand just a few more moments on our marketing collateral work, you'll see, if you're interested in seeing our regional collateral, we have for every single sector that on your behalf we're out talking about with companies. We've analyzed the data and understand our competitive position. We do a lot of digital marketing, but also hard print collateral that we have available. We do media tours, so we'll host in any given year 2 to 3 different national reporter cohorts that will come to Greater Phoenix, and we will pitch them on different angles of storytelling for our marketplace. It could be the downtown renaissance, it could be our workforce strategies in the West Valley, it could be the growth of technology companies in certain parts of the region as well. A variety of topics we'll cover, even water, for example. We spend a lot of time talking about Arizona's water position and educating the media on where we stand to really thwart some negative national media that generally covers Arizona, not in a so positive way when it comes to water. And then we do a monthly distribution letter to national consultants, to brokers, tenant reps, again, representing our market positioning, and then we also host CEO forums around mega events. So we'll partner with ACA, we'll partner with the governor's office on bringing CEOs to the market around mega events, and then we'll execute in any given year between 20 and 30 different sales mission strategies into the California market and other markets like New York and others. So industry prospecting, this was activity 2 in our contract. And again, as you can probably surmise on the left-hand column, we track anytime we have any conversation with a company, we're tracking it. So if you ever wanted to understand who we're talking to, the geographic concentration of where they're coming from, the industries or the operational use of what they're looking at, we manage and attract a lot of different companies from around the world. This is our domestic picture. You'll see a majority come out of California, about 25%. We spend a lot of time cultivating relationships in the Bay Area as well. We coordinate our Economic Development Directors team, which is what EDDT means, of which we have the utilities, our workforce partners, and our economic development teams participating in a monthly meeting that we coordinate and lead. And then also our board of directors meet quarterly as well. We host executive tours for out-of-market executives coming in to understand the value proposition of the market. And then we also produce market intelligence reports. We'll be launching in January our most recent in a series which is an update on the aerospace and defense activity and the supply chain, the health of our prime contractors, which is our most significant legacy industry base in this entire region. We have many tier 1 suppliers and manufacturers and OEMs that are in this market that we have to ensure that we have the right policies, the right engagement to maintain that level of interaction with those companies, because on average their average wages are twice, almost 2.5 times our county median. So next is activity 3, is more about planning and organization. So we do launch an annual action plan, which is available on our new website, which went live late last week. And then we also have an overarching strategic plan that's an engagement through our county board of supervisors, our mayors in the region, as well as CEOs. Kind of gives us the white line on strategy on our strategic plan. Annual action plan is really what I'm covering today. And then we systemize our regional and state partners and how we leverage ACA resources and other partnerships with Westmark and East Valley Partnership. And then we have an ambassador network that's grown to over 1,000 individuals, and we do content series on the economy. So we talk about relevant topics as it relates to how competitive we are, our education, our workforce positions, things we need to be educating the CEO networks in the GPEC network in terms of making our market competitive. So moving to just the last few slides here. FY17, which is again in the year that we're in our first quarter of, moving into our second quarter. We're going to continue to intensify our outbound recruitment efforts, which again I talked about driving even a higher level of outcome for our communities in our county in terms of net new projects and new tax implications. We'll continue to case build. One of the significant pivots that we've taken as an organization is instead of simply driving more and more transactions, we have ongoing meetings with our mayors, ongoing meetings with the communities on community preparedness to ensure every one of our cities has the requisite understanding of what it takes to compete for projects. So no longer are we just saying, let's let the communities figure it out on their own. We're giving them direct, real-time advice on why companies are making certain decisions, the type of community planning and infrastructure they need to compete, the type of community inputs that we need in each respective community to compete for everything from millennial talent to advanced manufacturing talent. And we've also launched demo days, which many of you have participated in with us, which is really to organize kind of sub-regional strategies and then getting our development and real estate community out through GPEC as a portal to get exposure to each of the respective submarkets in Metro Phoenix, as opposed to where their comfort levels generally lie. We also will be launching a very aggressive FDI, foreign direct investment campaign in Q1 as well. You'll see that about today it's 20% of our deal flow comes from foreign sources. We'll continue to leverage trade partnerships with Mexico, both trade and export, and FDI opportunities out of Canada. But I do think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in Western Europe and in Asia around sensors. So you'll see more of our activity focused on sensors, which is everything from autonomous vehicle to wearable technologies to healthcare diagnostic systems. That is a brand identity that our region does have the capability of launching Instead of us being known for simply having the Grand Canyon or being a lifestyle market, we want to infuse more of an industry positioned identity. So that's what we'll be doing as well. Advancing competitiveness through regional collaboration. That could be everything from economic policy, education preparedness, workforce development. And then lastly, we'll continue our partnership with Velocity. I sit on the Velocity board. This is an organization that's spun out of GPEC and is focused on how do we build the next generation pipeline of talent. How do we induce the level of science and technology and innovation, physical characteristic that we're going to need for our area? And then lastly, how do we unlock the entrepreneurial ecosystem in a much more direct way, being that our community is really spread out compared to other more dense markets. So that in a nutshell is our action plan for this year. I'll leave just the FY17 metrics on on the slide here. One other thing I wanted to cover as well is you do have 8 nominating seats that come from the Board of Supervisor Chairman and this respective board on the GPEC board overall. We do have a number of private sector leaders, as I described earlier. One of the important characteristics of GPEC is that we want to maintain the level of private sector leadership and interaction, at the same time having the public sector represented. And so in that case, you have 4 of those individuals are seated on GPEC's executive board. You have 2 other members that are on GPEC's full board, and then 2 individual appointments on behalf of this body, and that is Supervisor Barney and Supervisor Chukri at this time. So I will pause, and I tried to get through that very quickly. I know you have a busy agenda today, but hopefully that was an overview of the type of work that obviously we have a lot of pride in what we do and have the pleasure of representing the county board in this regard.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Steve, anything?
Yes. Chris, when you were talking about the technology on the last slide, I think it was develop a regional foreign direct investment. So, which I think is great because that's where it's going. Are you working with the universities on some of this more advanced technologies? ASU, we assisted in trying to apply to get them a grant through the federal government, through I think the Department of Defense, that talks about those wearable applications and that's exactly where we're going. And for a state like the size we are and what we're doing in the Far East Valley with Apple and the like, I think we're well suited and well positioned to be a true marketplace in that regard. So are you working with the universities and would it be just ASU or is it all the state universities as well as the GCUs of the world?
Sure. So Mr. Chukri, we have ongoing partnerships with Arizona State University. They're probably couldn't be a stronger partner than what we have with Dr. Crow. A lot of it's the forward-facing advanced industry strategy in terms of recruiting these type of physical hubs, which are have strong technology dispositions around sensors, around flexible electronics. That is where the market's going, and one of those pathways is attracting federal government type induced capital that then we get follow-on capital in the market for those labs. Kind of the next generation federal labs is kind of the new focus. What I'm describing in addition to that is an outward-facing brand identity. And so those two coupled together, very strong partnerships with not only ASU, however, with Grand Canyon University as well, and the community college system under Dr. Harper Marinick. We're working with her more so on the workforce strategy of the 2-year technical programming to ensure we have the right type of capable employees meeting the supply-demand changes of the next generation jobs that are going to be coming online. And so with the workforce system and the education system, this is the strongest alignment I've seen from GPEC with even U of A, ASU, and the community colleges and GCU.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Danny, anything?
No, just other than to say we grateful for the work you do. Steve and I have an opportunity to represent the board in these meetings, and frankly just marvel at the collaboration that I've been able to see between the private sector, who funds 2/3 of the enterprise, kind of coupled together with us and the other municipal jurisdictions and the universities and other educational infrastructure. I've been very, very impressed, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to continue serving there, and a big supporter of the work that they do. So
Great, Danny. Thank you. Steve, anything for Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chris, for the work that you all have done. I think I have a better understanding of the organization being here on the board than I've ever had in my political life. But nonetheless, thank you for the work you've done. I guess my question is two issues. One is identifying those, I guess, barriers or issues that would prevent a business or corporation from locating in Arizona, and also what work perhaps the organization does at the legislative level. We were here not too long ago where we had a similar presentation, and I asked that question. I said, what are those barriers? And the response was, well, sometimes it's what happens at the Capitol impacts businesses coming to our valley. And I guess what resources or activities have been done or will be done to help educate the legislature in terms of the impact that some of the bills that introduce, I think some of them that are introduced, you will have bipartisan opposition to, even the governor, because they understand the impact it has on the image of the state of Arizona. Give you a perfect example. We were in Flagstaff last week, and a lawmaker announced that he was going to introduce a bill that would mandate a vetting of every Syrian refugee coming to the state of Arizona. Well, that's the sort of stuff that puts us in late night shows and have every national news media talking about. So from those two perspectives, in terms of what are those barriers and how do we educate the legislature in the impact that some of the bills may have in bringing businesses to the valley?
Sure. Supervisor Gardo, great question. So 2 parts. First is image is critical, and particularly today when companies have more options than ever before. We have a great tax and regulatory environment, a very attractive place to do business, and what I know this governor has committed to is ensuring that we don't have some of the noise that other states have been dealing with lately. They've done a really good job of squelching a lot of those issues, and I hope that continues because companies pay attention to that. And even as we look forward, where we're at from a brand perspective, we've got great tailwinds. What's still ahead of us as an obstacle is our education system. We're not alone in that issue, but what kind of, in my mind, puts this market on steroids in a positive way to garner more positive media attention is making major investment decisions around education and workforce development, because companies today, while they continue to measure and value the tax and regulatory environment, our ability to produce people to meet in-demand industry needs is the future. And that aligns with Supervisor Chukri's comment on technology. These are now all intertwined, and the digitization of how companies can go online and find information, and now HR managers are key and pivotal to a company coming here or not. Labor is the most critical faction to whether we win or lose today. And so if you want to see GPEC's pipeline continue to improve in terms of the composition, the types of companies, we have to have a long-term strategic plan on education, and then be very vocal about celebrating what we're doing in our education, really K through 20. We have some big decisions coming up on that. And the rest of the industry side, when I get the question about the tax and regulatory environment, we don't lose any projects on being too expensive. We lose on, if we do lose, which is not that often, because I don't like to lose. But when companies select other markets, it's generally anchored around their connectivity to a major medical school, their connectivity to an applied research center, or the talent composition has more maturity in another market than here. So those are the couple areas that we've got to continue to focus on.
And Mr. Chairman, because I think the education of our legislators, me being a recovering one, is really important. And having yourself or your organization having a presence down there, I know you guys are there, I've seen you guys in the past, is so critical. And to sit down with particularly some of the new legislators that are first timers, and they want to go make a name for themselves, and God bless them, let them do their work and represent their people. But sometimes there's some unintended consequences to the legislation that they introduce. And it's not moving the state forward. It's not helping our economy. It's not helping our image. And they continue to introduce these pieces of legislation. And I think some of the bills, you'll find some strong bipartisan support, even from the ninth floor, to keep these from really moving forward and seeing the light of day, because it's just not helping us. And I was there during the 2000, the ugliest times probably, when it came to the issues of immigration, and you know, it didn't help us. It didn't help our economy, it didn't help our image, and from working from that aspect, I think is really important. So, thank you.
Great, thank you, Steve. Andy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, thanks for being here. Several years ago, when I served on the board over at GPEC, we had some concerns that we had a lot of locates that were being prospected or recruited that were low wage, kind of entry level, where at the time I think Access was the healthcare provider for a lot of these people. First, a compliment to the organization for shifting some focus, or at least putting more focus on the high wage jobs. It looks like you've really nailed it. What what is the ratio? I know we need entry level jobs for people to get a start and start moving up, but are we still focusing on those ratios?
Sure. Yeah, Supervisor Kunasik, Mr. Chairman. So our outbound strategy is 100% we spend time on targeting high wage industries. There are times when a company calls us and it's a customer service related opportunity or logistics opportunity that still will induce significant local and county revenue, but the wages that coincide with those jobs might be middle tier wages. So we'll still support the due diligence of those companies, but our targeting 100% is the high wage industry. Today our split is about 60% are the high wage jobs, and those are again about 2 to 2.5 times the county median. But there are a certain percentage of jobs that will take the inbound call that it might be even major corporations, as we want to optimize our cost position from California and bring in sales, customer service, and entry-level IT, and those wages might be $40,000 on average. They're not the high-wage jobs, but when we're in a competitive position, we'll still obviously aggressively pursue those jobs as well.
Okay. Well, I didn't have anything else. I wanted just to clarify that and put it all into historical relevance for myself. So, thanks.
Just one thing from me, Chris. I was attending a meeting about a month ago, and now I know that they've also had a meeting about it down at the legislature, like a educational meeting about prosperity districts. Are you getting briefed on that, or are you following that at all?
Mr. Chairman, I have been briefed initially probably a year ago, so it's prior to the last legislative session. There's continuing conversations about what they are and what they're not, and as there adds more clarity. We had some initial concerns about oversight, process, federal government interaction with approval processes and so forth. Until I see what is actually being proposed, I'll abstain comment on that.
Okay, because they were talking about unincorporated areas making their own regulations, and then you've got competitive influences and stuff. So I just want to make sure that you're aware and are monitoring that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm creating Gallardo land.
Gallardo land. Can't wait to see the rise in that. All right. With that, any other questions? We good? Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
Chris, thank you.
Thank you for being here today.
Oh,
Thanks,
yeah.
Chris.
Thank you very much.
All right.
I got you.
Next up,
Thank you, Chris.
Mr. Bruce Liggett and Miss Alicia Jackson are here today to discuss the Maricopa County Head Start program. So, good morning to you guys.
Well, Mr. Chairman, members, this is a perfect segue
Yeah.
because
Yes.
we are preparing youth for success in school and to be the workforce of tomorrow. So that's our role. Okay? So we've got a really quick presentation to run you through here this morning. We usually do this annually. The federal funding agency, Health and Human Services, wants to see regular board briefings in terms of the program, and that's what we're doing here today. So next, based on what I did last week with one. I held it upside down and I couldn't get it to work.
You're on probation now.
Yeah.
I'm not having any
Point it
better luck.
towards the podium.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you, Alicia. So we're going to cover quickly program highlights from the past year, governance roles and responsibilities, the required part, and what's new about the current year that we're in. And we will be back to you for formal approval of the plan probably in March. But first, the program highlights. Alicia?
Sure, so just letting you know how we ended our year last year. We served a little over 3,000 children. Many of them were 3 and 4-year-olds. We're still targeting a lot of our preschool children, but then of course we continue to serve almost 700 children from birth to age 36 months. We've seen very little change in the number of children that we are serving where their primary language at home. It's about 50% English and 50% Spanish. Some of the other languages we see are families that are Middle Eastern or South Asian and European languages. And then the number of children that we're serving and some of the risk factors, you can see those there. We're funded to serve families that are at 100% of the federal poverty level. So what that really means is for a family of 4, they're making about $25,000 a year or less. So these are families that are really suffering from poverty. Of course, we're also serving those families that are experiencing homelessness, children in foster care, and children with special needs. About 14% of our children that we serve are children that have disabilities or special needs.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
what's the total? 3,315 kids, that's a huge number and it's a heartache, but the population is much bigger than that. Who's serving the rest of them?
That's a great question.
And why are, I love the work you do and we've talked about this, why are we in this space other than the fact that somebody's willing to give us a grant? And are we best situated to do it? And if so, are we scaling because the population is so much bigger?
I think we've been doing it for 50 years, and I think we're ideal to do it.
Never the
because
right
of-
answer, though.
No, I understand. But I think we've never been in a better situation to be doing it now with the connections we're making across all of our programs. So when somebody comes to us as a job seeker in our workforce program, we want them to get a job and be stable in that job. What's happening with their kids? So can we make a connection to the early childhood program to start to get their children taken care of in this? What's happening to a family in Head Start that may be in trouble and at risk and need help with an emergency rental payment? We make a connection to our community services. So we're integrating human services as part of our whole delivery
So
system.
this is one leg of kind of the wraparound services that are being provided. So we're not targeting these children so much as they're associated with other services that we're providing that are part of the.
Well, the law requires us to serve kids who are most at risk. So this isn't a program that does creaming. So we're serving, as you saw, with the language issues and some of the other barriers these kids and their families have. So we target those folks and then we link them with all. So you said it right. That's one of the legs of our stool.
I think another important point too is that we're part of a larger community that's serving young children with, that are experiencing poverty. Head Start is just one of many. School districts are putting their money into early childhood as well. They're serving them through special ed preschool or doing things like Kinder U. We have cities and towns, many of them are taking on through their community rec programs. So while our program may serve less than 8% of the eligible children, combining that with what childcare is doing, what cities and towns are doing, what school districts are doing, we're one piece that's serving a very comprehensive program that for some of the most vulnerable. But there seems to be a lot of traction in our communities and towns and across the nation around investing in early childhood. So I think we're a piece of that, but there's an investment that's being made not only by the county but throughout the state.
This piece is a big piece too. The state defunded preschool programs and the state continually ranks near the bottom of providing preschool for at-risk kids. So with Head Start and First Things First, that's where most of the funding's going on.
Thank you.
So the next slide then in terms of one of the major highlights for last year is we got a $2.5 million grant to expand partnerships with childcare. And in previous jobs I've had, I did a lot of work in early childhood education, and this is really exciting to me. I used to direct the Arizona Child Care Association, and what we're doing now is linking Head Start with childcare. Why? Because so many of the families need to work or are working, And Head Start has tended to be a small part-day, part-school year basis program. This allows us to expand our days and our hours, so now we're meeting the needs of working families and letting those families continue to stay employed. So we're doing that in partnership with private childcare providers. So it's really a great innovation. And just by them getting involved with Head Start, that whole private childcare center is increasing their quality of care for the kids. So it's win-win all the way around.
And then we're always excited to share with you some of the results that we're getting. These are scores for our 4-year-olds as they participated in at least 1 year of our preschool program. We see that they come to us many times, you know, a little over half of them, in some cases less than half of them, are able to meet some of those readiness indicators of what we like to see them being able to do when they start kindergarten. And so we feel really confident that the children that are leaving our program are really, we are beginning to close that achievement gap for them. We particularly focused this last year on some of our math and science scores, and so our math and science curriculum, I should say, and so we saw an improvement of about 10% of our kids even showing up better with some of their math and science scores. This next slide kind of gives you an idea of our funded enrollment from last year and about where we serve. So we were pretty spread throughout the county. Of course, we served the highest number of children in Mesa and Glendale because they have the highest number of eligible children with the greatest amount of population.
So the second purpose of the briefing was to quickly walk through the role of the board in terms of the program and its shared governance with a policy council of primarily parents who provide oversight. We meet with monthly. Your liaison to that is Chris Arzaga Williams, and so she attends those meetings. And we provide you, in terms of the legal and fiscal responsibilities, monthly reports that are part of the consent agenda in the board items. We're going to be expanding those this coming years because some of the regs have changed to add more monitoring and outcome data, probably on a quarterly basis. So you'll see a little bit more information in our regular consent agenda items. The next one, the board annually approves our application and our budget, our audit, the community needs assessment that we're required to do, the selection and enrollment criteria, our self-assessment and corrective action, and our goals. And then we come to you as needed with policies and standards of conduct. So that's the required part of this briefing. The next is what's happening this year. And last year was a very difficult year for us in Head Start. And I think you remember going back a year and a half ago when then Chairman Barney was supportive of our pushback on the feds. You recall we had an incident that happened one day for a brief period of time with a child temporarily left alone. That put us into a category of having to compete for what we've done all these years, even though we were acknowledged by feds at all levels that we were one of the highest quality programs around. That competition then fell into the bureaucracy with people making decisions who had no knowledge of what's happening in our program or in Maricopa County, and they made some decisions that I think are questionable. Nevertheless, what happened was we were awarded a 5-year grant for the eastern part of Maricopa County, and Catholic Charities was awarded the western part. They've been a delegate agency forever. Our money was primarily passed through to them, and they wanted the opportunity to run it directly. And nationally, when this recompetition happened, that's who tended to get awarded. There seemed to be some federal bias, in my opinion, and I've told this to federal officials, towards having smaller programs, which made no sense to me when we're trying to run a comprehensive integrated program that serves all of Maricopa County. So there was this bureaucratic bias and decisions made. We had high-ranking officials saying to us, what happened? So we're going to continue to make our dissatisfaction known, and there's some laws that may be moving that we may want to work with government affairs to see if we can kind of shape so that this doesn't happen. This has been a distraction for our employees and the families, and has nothing to do with early childhood education. But we got a 5-year grant, and we're moving forward. So we're serving eastern Maricopa County. our childcare partnerships that I described are still countywide. So the feds, again, incrementally award these things. You see, we're gonna serve 850 pre-K kids, 166 infants and toddlers with longer days, more units of service. The program jargon is dosage and duration. They get more and they're longer, and our research shows that those kids do better. Catholic Charities is going to be serving the West Valley. And then for an inexplicable reason, the feds decided to carve out a little portion of Mesa and give it to Crisis Nursery to run in their program. So whereas the history of Head Start has been, you have a region, that's your region, they carved it out, forcing us to deal with coordination issues about recruiting families and transferring children and those kind of things as they age out of programs. So Crisis Nursery is doing a small program for infants and toddlers. We're still the preschool provider in Mesa. So, and we were awarded our child care grant also for 5 years, so we're continuing on. Going to the next slide, our funding was reduced overall by about 7 million, I think, from last year. But again, a lot of that was passed through to Catholic Charities, the vast majority. But we did need some admin because we had to monitor them and provide them professional support services. So we ended up going through a RIF this year. We had to eliminate a lot of positions at the department level who were doing finance work and IT-related work. So what we did, and what Alicia is an amazing leader at doing, is saying, let's seize upon the opportunity. So we did some things to improve things for our employees.
Absolutely, you never let a good crisis go to waste, right? So we really looked at this as an opportunity since we were rehiring all of our staff, and most of our staff, of course, are teachers. We re-looked at the market ranges for our teachers, and we were able to make some changes to that so we could be more competitive with what we were paying our staff. We created some full-year classified positions. We moved some contracted positions into classified. We re-interviewed and rehired our staff. Of course, this required a tremendous amount of county support, and a big shout out to our Human Resources Department, because not only did they really support us through, which was one of the most difficult things professionally I've ever had to do, was go through a reduction in force, incredibly difficult, but they were so sensitive and so kind, and just were so professional with how they dealt with all of our staff that were affected, as well as us that were having to make some really difficult decisions, to hiring back 100 people in a short period of time so we'd be ready to go in August. It was a lot of work, and we were very, very grateful to the work of the Human Resources to help us get through that.
Alicia's strategy here was, since we had a reduced number of people, we had a lot of contract employees and others, is to open it up to everybody. So kind of consistent with the HR reforms, we hired back the best. We were able to do that because of this process, so that's better for the kids that we're serving and the families. So.
But they were hired back specifically as classified?
As many as we could. Yeah, some of our teachers are still only working a 9-month school year, and so they came back as contract. But we did have some with the extended hours that we were having with in some of our classrooms. We were able to bring some back as classified.
Even with when they were previously contract, they had so many of the benefits of a regular employee. So we had health care arrangements during the summer when they weren't working that we had to take care of. It was a lot more complicated for the county also to have them in contracted spots. So.
All right, so we're pleased to be continuing our 50 years of implementing our quality early care and education. So some things that we're looking forward to moving forward is, Bruce had mentioned, we have some performance standards, which are the federal regulations that govern Head Start. Those have been revised after 35 years, so we're getting an opportunity to get familiar with our new regulations. We were able to successfully obtain a little COLA increase of about 1.3% this year, so we were able to do that with our funds. And we've also applied for additional funds to increase the day, or increase that number of hours a day for our preschoolers. And we've also applied for expansion of our early Head Start, which is our infants and toddlers, in both partnerships with child care and some non-partnerships. So we have about $2 million in federal funds that we have out being requested, that I think will continue to serve vulnerable populations in the county.
Right. Questions? Anyone? Nope.
Can I have just one clarification on, back on your slide? It's not numbered, but Head Start in Maricopa County. The new service area, is that just new because you've taken out the child crisis area? Or, I mean, is it geographically, how is it different?
We've taken out the west side and this little part of Mesa that's child crisis for infants and toddlers. So the west side, for a long time, we got the grant. We passed through half of it almost to Catholic Charities. So they got their grant directly, so
Okay.
they've got the west,
I missed that.
they've got the west side now.
Okay. All right.
What-
Got it now.
It's a good question, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Knasick brought up a good question. On the got me thinking here. On the Catholic charity side, I would imagine there's some type of evaluation tool. How do we know that they're providing the services to the level that they should? I mean, that if we're going to give them one half of our county, how do we make sure that Catholic charities are doing what they should be doing?
Well,
At the level that they should be.
yeah, and that role is good, since the feds made the decision, that role will fall on them to monitor that. You should know that when we were told of the award, I called their CEO and congratulated him for that, because I understood they wanted to do their own thing.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not questioning
but-
Catholic charities here. I'm not questioning, I'm just.
We competed, we wanted to continue the west side because we have a stronger vision. We're doing the child care partnerships, we're linking into our workforce programs. We have a stronger case to be made. The feds didn't hear it. But, so that's their job, but we're gonna work closely with them still, as we do with Southwest Human Development and the city of Phoenix, who runs their own Head Start program too. So,
Good stuff. Thank
That
you.
doesn't necessarily preclude, if you've got a good working relationship with them, that you can still keep that focus, right?
absolutely, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. We're all partners in this, early education system. It's too fragmented, but that's like a lot of government, so.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we have to adjourn out of this session or just go into
I make a
executive?
motion to go into.
A motion to go into executive session.
I'll move, Mr. Chairman.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. 5 minutes?
Perfect.
Thank you. Okay.